Hello, McFarland, and I am Shannon Morrison. I am a resident here in McFarland and a communications manager with our local neighborhood association, Prairie Ridge Neighborhood Association. I am here today. Joining me is TJ Jerke, who is a McFarland resident and also happens to be a candidate for McFarland Village Board. Welcome, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, really. This is great.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to talk to you and really get your message out, help people kind of connect with you, not only as a candidate for our village board, but also as a person and as a member of our community. I think it's always wonderful to meet some new people that are in our community, and I'll be honest, this is one of the first times that we've actually met and crossed paths, so this will be a great interview. Hopefully we'll get some great information and be able to share that with the community today.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Where are you from, and how did you come to be a McFarlander?
Yeah, my backstory, I'm born and raised in South Dakota. Okay. Mom and dad were teachers. I talk about a lot, just talking about the education profession in general and how important it is. But that, kind of set the foundation or created and established that foundation for me and helped get me to where I am today, of course. Grew up there, went to the University of South Dakota, obtained a degree in contemporary media and journalism with a minor in political science. But there I was big and involved with our school newspaper. I did several different summer internships at different newspapers around the Midwest. And my main focus, though, was to grow up, get this degree, and move and become a political reporter. So I did that, successfully landed a position up in Bismarck, North Dakota, as a political reporter in the state capitol, but covering state, national politics. And I think that's really where we start at the beginning stages of what I came to understand and learn and believe in when it comes to the work that I'm pursuing within the village. From there, I met my lovely wife in North Dakota, who's from North Dakota, and we got married in 2017, spring of 2017, so we're coming up close on our 5-year, which is really exciting. But before we moved, we had great positions. The community we lived in was absolutely wonderful, and great friends, etc. Right, just a great network. But we wanted something different. We loved what North Dakota had to offer, what the Dakotas had to offer, but we wanted to pursue something bigger, better, exciting, have more opportunity, that sort of thing. My mother grew up in Northeast Wisconsin, so I like to tell people I'm born and raised a Packer, Badger, Brewer fan through and through. Yes, we can rest assured, right? So I've been coming to Wisconsin, my whole life, especially up in the east side. Northeast corner, and my aunt and uncle live in Madison on the east side. And so one summer prior to us getting married, we came down here for a wedding, met some friends, met up with aunt and uncle, and thankfully my wife fell in love with Madison. So it wasn't hard for us to figure out that we wanted to move to this area. She's in the legal world, I'm in the communications political realm, so it made perfect sense. And so she took a position downtown on the square with a law firm. I ended up taking a great position with the National Trade Association, doing some communications and policy work. And that's where we started and landed here in the greater Madison area. Fast forward, we were fortunate and lucky enough to find a home off of Bremer Road on the west side of the village, which we absolutely love. We're at that stage now where we're like, okay, we know there's some improvements, some things we got to do to the home. It's never ending, right? But that's where we're at there, is trying to figure out, okay, what's next with this whole home ownership thing. And that's, where we came to be, right? It was just kind of this idea that, over the years we wanted something different, and we wanted different opportunities, and we knew Madison and Wisconsin as a whole had those. And we were fortunate enough to land in this village, in this community, and now I have the opportunity to speak with you and the community and get involved in many different capacities. And we're just very excited to be here.
It's awesome. It's always fun when you're preparing a house and getting things moving forward with a house. I always call it the process of turning a house into a home.
Yeah, definitely. We're still in that process.
The dust has settled from the first move in. Now what else can I do to stir up the dust? So in coming here, you've been here since what year again?
So in the greater area since 2017, McFarland 2020.
Okay, since 2020 in McFarland. What drew you to become involved with McFarland politics in particular, with our village government?
Yeah, so to take us back just a bit, I've talked a lot about my journalism experience. It was rather short-lived in terms of my professional journalism career. However, that education and those opportunities I had growing up and in college and immediately after, really propelled me to where we are today and to that question. One big piece I found when I was covering the legislature in North Dakota is I would go to elected officials and I would say, hey, this proposal is being heard. You changed this, you suggested that, like what's going on? Why'd you do that? What was the purpose? All those journalism questions, right? Doing my job. And so often I would hear from these elected officials, well, it doesn't matter, right? It's not that significant. It was just a minor change to this statewide proposal, right? Yeah, exactly. And, other than making sure that they understood, like, well, this is my job. I'm here to ask you questions and convey and educate the public. It really kind of got my head going a little bit about how big of an impact the small or large changes can make to any one person, group, community, and so forth, right? Realizing that one small change in a word or one change in a sentence when it comes to a city ordinance, a state law, can have just resounding effects and impacts, good and bad, for communities. And I think that started kind of flip the switch or turn the dial a little bit for me. And from there, I think it was just a natural evolution to where I was writing these stories. I was educating the Midwest on different political issues. And eventually it just came to a head where I said, you know what, I no longer want to write and educate the public about these issues. I want to be on the other side. I want to be part of the organizations, be part of the solutions that are tackling these issues I write day in and day out. So that's what really kickstarted me into politics and getting involved in advocacy work. I've held different positions with different statewide nonprofit organizations and national groups where I've been advocating at the local, state, and federal level on a myriad of different issues. And so I've become incredibly involved in understanding of what's going on and how these processes work. And a lot of people may not like the minutia and the rather mundane parts of local government or state and national government, but it's important. And I get excited, kind of a nerd about it, and I'm proud to say that. And I think I understand that enough. I have the experiences and the opportunities are ahead of us that pushed me and propelled me into getting involved in McFarland. So when we moved here, shortly after we moved here, there was an opportunity to join the volunteer committee. Now it's been disbanded. There's been some restructuring, of course, in a good way, though. The village came to the committee and said, hey, we're thinking about taking a different approach. And we said, yeah, no, we understand. We get it. But the volunteer committee was great. It was a phenomenal opportunity the village had for this committee to meet monthly and talk about different ways we can get more villagers to understand what's going on, involved in some of these processes, right, involved in other committees, so forth, right?
Yeah.
It was great. From there, once the village restructured or began restructuring kind of the committees and everything, I had an opportunity to join the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Committee, right? We're sitting in Lewis Park right now. Beautiful park, even though on a rainy day.
It's warmer than North Dakota?
I don't doubt that, yes. And from there, there's been so much opportunity, so many different things that are shifting and moving and chess pieces that are advancing within the village that it's just an exciting time to both be on that committee and be here today speaking with you as we run for election on the village board. So that's how we got here. That's where we're going.
Awesome. It's awesome how, and this is kind of segue, and I want to make sure I read my next question right off my papers because I know what it's leading to. But reflecting on it, knowing what I do know about you, I think it's just an excellent marriage of your education and skill set to be working in this kind of community where we have so much growth and so many things ahead of us, and to be able to know that there's somebody working from all sides that's working to bring that information forward to the village, which, as we've discussed in our limited interactions, is also a passion of mine. So going going back to my papers here. With a degree in contemporary media and journalism and political science, it seems a bit obvious how you feel these skills might lend itself to the McFarland government. But let's talk about this a little bit. And this is something that I mentioned to you. Is this 1 degree or is this 2 degrees? And how do you think that this influences your involvement specifically in McFarland?
Yeah, so thank you. To the first question, the short end of it's 1 degree in journalism. It's a minor in political science, but I like to say it was an education in journalism, political science, simply because some days when I was going about my business, right, I was focused on journalism and political science, and I think in my head I was quite torn on what I wanted to do as an adult in the real world. But yeah, it's contemporary media journalism degree, specifically with a focus on print. But the degree itself provided me with an education to look at operating cameras, right, editing video, photos, graphic design, etc. As we were propelling at that time into the tech world that we are in now, it was important that we had all those traits, right? But where it lends itself to what I've done and what I want to do is one of the big things that I pride myself on and want to do on the village board is make sure we listen. Right. One of the biggest things I've done in the last, since announcing my candidacy, is I've reached out to many different community leaders, elected officials, just anyone that may have a voice or want to have a voice in this community, to understand what are their ideas, what are their priorities, where do they want to see this village go, and how can I do that as their voice, as their representative on the village board, right? One of, anyway. And I have to say, those conversations have been phenomenal, right? Both the ones I've reached out to folks to have a sit down, or a lot of people have reached out to me, said, hey, here's some ideas, here's some priorities that we have and would like to see, right? So it's been a two-way communication, and it's been wonderful to hear from so many people and organizations. So listening is incredibly important for any elected official, any elected body. But what you do when you listen is you want to make sure you hear all perspectives. And what I found as a journalist is there's not just 1 or 2 sides to an issue. There's sometimes 4, 12, 100 different sides or perspectives when it comes to any given issue, right? What color is this tablecloth, or, what should this look like, or, those sorts of things. And so it's so important, especially in a community like McFarland, right? We don't quite have 10,000 people, which I think is an advantage, quite honestly. I can talk about that more later, but to hear everybody out, right? To make sure that every perspective is taken into account, and that we make sure that we're using the best sound judgment, reasoning, and information from the community that we serve to make the best decisions possible. So I think, listening and how you listen is incredibly important. That's something that you had to do as a journalist, right? You sat there, you asked the questions, and so forth. And so it's a segue into the second piece, is that asking questions, right? Doing the research and asking questions, rather. When you are working on any given topic, right? Whether it's in your profession or, in your pastime, right? Doing some home remodeling, you want to either go to the experts, right? Ask them the questions, or you yourself, want to get online, get those books out, whatever the case, and make sure you understand what it is you're doing or going to talk about or want to do. And I think it's so important that any elected official, any elected body, make sure they do the research. And what's great, especially in McFarland, is we have village staff members who are phenomenal and know what they're doing, know what they're talking about, and are incredibly capable of doing so much for our village. Already have, right? But there's so much opportunity out there that, I think it's going to be exciting to see where we go, especially in the next 2 years. So I think making sure you do the research, you educate yourself as an elected official, but also be okay with asking those questions, right? Be confident and comfortable saying, hey, you know what? I don't quite know or understand this. Can you tell me, right? As a reporter, that's what I did all the time, right? As a journalist, I said, tell me the details. What's going on here? Why is this important? What do we need to know? And I want to do that, right? I've done that. I continue to do that in different capacities, both in my personal and professional life. And I want to do that on the village board because I feel like it's going to lead to good community changes and policies, and making sure that we're being strategic and sustainable when it comes to what we want to do and where we want to go.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. We will be revisiting the sustainability component of this, if not in this conversation, in potential future dialogues that'll be happening. And I will come back to that, so don't feel that I'm glossing over that part as we talk about it. In everything that you've discussed, and this is something I can appreciate, 10,000 different perspectives in McFarland. And one could argue that there's probably 10,000 different answers to this question. What do you feel are the one or two strengths that are the greatest strengths within the McFarland community?
Yeah, I'm probably going to overgeneralize my initial answer, and that is people and places. And to qualify that, start with people. We have so many people in this village that are passionate, understanding, caring, just brilliant minds, right? Whether they, are business owners, they're part of our nonprofit sector, they're our village staff members, you name it, right? I've talked to so many people just over the last couple of months that what they have in their minds and how we can and could leverage that is, I can't even rationalize it. Like, there's so many great people, great ideas out there that, we need to leverage and can find ways to do that, that will only make this village, even better if we do that. And so the people, though, number one, when we talk about people, it's hard not to talk about the school district, the teachers, the staff, the administrators, everyone involved. A lot of people move to McFarland because of school district. I would bet a good, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but a good majority probably have moved here because they understand or they know through, their own research or talking to some residents that we have a phenomenal school district. And I think that's only because we have the school leadership, we have the teachers, we have the passion for making sure that we provide that quality service here in the community. So, I can go on, but the people here are wonderful, and I think they're a valuable resource that we need to continue leveraging however we can, and making sure that their voices are at the table so that we can be, just moving this village forward, however that makes sense, or however we want to. And then the places, right? Again, very general, but as we sit in Lewis Park, right, it's hard not to look at our parks and recreation systems and trails and opportunities, right? Yeah. As we look out over the lake behind us, we know that there's going to be some consulting work taking place to see how do we get access to this lake, right? That we're currently, there's currently active work on that. And that's such a wonderful opportunity for so many different reasons. But parks, recreation, just the outdoor places that our community has to be able to say, this is part of our home, right? This is our community, this is our home, are just outstanding, right? And I go back to the people, the staff, the parks department, they do a wonderful job maintaining those places, right? But then you look at, when you say places, you look at our business climate and community, right? There's so many wonderful opportunities, or wonderful areas, where my wife and I will go out for dinner, grab our groceries, whatever it is, we have it here in the village. Certainly there's opportunities within our economic and commercial development sector, but we have everything in this village, and we have the people behind it at those places that are making life just so much better for us because of the passions and the work that they've done, both as community members, but also the places they've created, those spaces rather, right? And so I think people, places, and then, I mentioned this earlier, but I think the size of the community kind of fits within that, maybe a third to my top two. And just briefly saying that our community, we're not quite over that 10,000 population threshold. And I think that is such a unique opportunity for us, especially when we looked at elected government, our village board, for example. We're large enough to have many amenities and opportunities, but we're not large enough where we can't hear people's voices and we can't bring them to the table and make sure we're collaborating in a strategic, sustainable way just to grow and at the benefit of McFarland.
Yeah, and its residents and the environment around us.
Yes.
Very true. In that, I did notice there was one but in your statements, and I want to expand on that. What do you feel are areas and places where we have room for growth and development, and perhaps channeling some of our skills and energy and resources to make something that's good even better.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest reasons I ran, in addition to what I've already told you, is that we have kickstarted efforts to look at how do we grow to the East Side Neighborhood Growth Plan, right? This is a very exciting time, right? And I think it's going to be important for the village board, especially over the next year, because the plan is over the next year to study, analyze, talk to the community, figure out what do we build to the east of the village? What do we want to offer our community? How do we grow in a way that makes sense and really supports everyone in this village? So the East Side Growth Plan is one phenomenal opportunity and one, quite honestly, probably one of the most challenging pieces that the village board is going to want to tackle, well, needs to tackle over the next year. As we look at the community listening sessions, working with the consultant in different fashions, and figuring out how the heck you develop a prime piece of real estate and connect it into the village, that's not easy work. And I want to be at the table. I want to be able to, leverage what I know and my experiences into those discussions, but also make sure that our community has the opportunity to be at that table and make sure that they hear what's going on or what's being presented, but also gets to shape what that east side of this village, because it's going to have a huge impact when we start looking at the village in the next 3, 4, 5+ years, right? So there's opportunity there, and what we can infill in there, I know there's a lot of discussion about looking at how do we get different amenities, commercial, retail, all sorts of different businesses into that part of the village, and how do you do it when it makes sense, right? And so there's just that opportunity there. I think that growth is going to happen, and it's going to be great when it does. But the questions, remain: what can that be? What should that be? And how do we, pursue it, right? So the East Side neighborhood is one, and then another opportunity for growth is the downtown area. This has been a piece that's been talked about for quite a while now, and there's been other assessments done in previous years. We have our 51 corridor, right, Stoughton Road. We have Farwell Street, which has had conversations and consultation with how we develop and connect the 51 corridor to the downtown sector. But now it's what do we do with the municipal center, right? We have this wonderful public safety center that's going up as we speak. That's supposed to be done by the year end here. So when our public safety moves over, we're going to have this open space, right? So there's
a good space.
Oh, yeah.
We're not leaving behind because it's falling apart. It's a very, very good space. It's just, like all good things, we've outgrown it here in McFarland. Exactly.
So, so we have a consultant working now on the East Side Neighborhood Plan. We have another one that's looking at how do we use this space in the best way possible. And some of the ideas that have come out, and I think we're going to end up seeing, is we're going to be able to serve our older population better through our senior services department, allowing them to expand and grow within that municipal center space. There's been discussion about how we serve our youth as well within that space. And then with that, it's a conversation about connecting that downtown area between the municipal center and library, right? That's been talked about in the past, and now we're going to see some ideas come out of this consulting work to see, can we make this a true downtown sector and a place where our residents and others from outside McFarland, want to come because it's fun, right? It's inviting. It has different opportunities. We have businesses down there, but where can we grow those businesses or bring in new business to that area as well? So to answer your question very simply, there's so much opportunity for growth and for anything in this village. And that's one of the things why I'm so excited to be running for the village board and hope to be and serve on the village board.
It is incredible to think about going to what you were saying about this East Side Growth Plan and how do we provide essentially everything to the east side of McFarland. Right now, where the Public Safety Center is being built is the far east side of McFarland. Some people who live in McFarland may not even go out to what we perceive as being the east side of McFarland. But where that safety center is anticipated to be geographically the center of McFarland. And when you think about that and you realize there is not nearly the population and housing density to the east of that spot of the Public Safety Center, that there is to the west of that, that's incredible amount of development that needs to occur, and everything from water and public works to public safety to senior outreach to even simpler things like getting your groceries. There is not a grocery store, that entire half. Is it that we will keep all of that moving to the west? Or when you think about that population density, does it warrant having its own center point on the east half of McFarland, or what will be McFarland at that time? So I definitely can see what you're talking about as far as the visual of where we go from here geographically and with regard to our services that we provide.
Yeah, and Shannon, I completely spaced this, but you reminded me, thank you. When I talk about the opportunities we have for growth and expansion, one of the biggest pieces I think that we really need to focus on in the village is the affordable housing piece. And that's why I'm so excited about the East Side Growth Plan, because that is where I think the village can truly bring in what I say true affordable housing, right? True affordable housing is making sure, we are building on smaller lots or properties, and we're making sure that what we're building makes sense for, the costs and the cost of living within the village and the different folks. When I read at the end of last year, we have the village, as you know, has a joint relationship with the school district, right? Now it's going to be a formal village board, school board joint committee, right? That's going to meet regularly. What the school district was telling the village board is we have had qualified teachers and staff apply for positions in our school district and basically have the offer letter in front of them, my words. But before they could sign or before they could truly commit to that position, they wanted to figure out how can they live in our village? How can they live in the same school district that they work? And we were losing qualified candidates. They couldn't find an affordable home, in whatever position they were in the village. So they, not only did they not take the position, they, moved on from McFarland as a whole, right? Hopefully, they did find a way back in. Hopefully, they will if they haven't yet. But that really resonated with me, knowing, I have my mom and dad are teachers, right? And kind of having that upbringing, but just seeing how important our school system is in McFarland and how, when we look at, making sure we're bringing in the best qualified teachers and educators and staff, we need to solve that problem. Yeah. And I think that East Side expansion, that growth opportunity there is where we can do it.
I think it's not only a great opportunity, but what you were saying before about sustainable solutions factors into that, because we can't just say, we need this, so we're going to plop it down right on the east side. It's how can we do that in a responsible manner that can sustain itself and provide these services without being haphazard, where we have, like you were saying, 3 downtown sectors. Which one's the real downtown? Do we now suddenly have 3 divided school sections? Which one's the real school district? And not having that kind of overlap when we could consolidate a lot of our resources to provide a more sustainable solution. So yeah, right on. I completely agree with a lot of what you're saying. Okay, I want to read this one correctly as well. So turning back to my papers more specifically. One item that you mentioned in the biography that you provided to the Prairie Ridge Neighborhood Association that was posted to the website for everybody to read was that, actually, perfect, is the thought, is through your work with nonprofit organizations, you were able to develop some long-term and sustainable solutions. Let's talk about this a little bit. What does this mean? And how do you feel that McFarland can benefit from your experiences, both your work with these nonprofit organizations as well as the long-term sustainable solutions that you discussed? What do long-term sustainable solutions look like from your perspective for a growing community like McFarland?
So many questions built in there. But
so many, I know, layers.
It's great, thank you. No, I've had the privilege of working in different capacities for nonprofit organizations. And the work that nonprofit groups do and how they do it is, one, phenomenal, but two, I don't know how some nonprofit groups do it, right? With either limited staff, resources, et cetera. It's remarkable how they extend, the resources and the people they do have. But what I found, one nonprofit organization I worked with looked at and addressed issues in a community, about 100,000 people in this community, and looked at education, income, and health, right? Those are three broad areas, but making sure that there was a solid educational system and opportunities, right? That income stability was a key factor in residents in this community, and that everyone had, the health care and access to opportunities to maintain, good, proper health. Within that, after I started, they identified a need in a needs assessment that said, hey, our kiddos in the school system are going home hungry, and they're coming to school on Monday hungry. And what that's impacting their ability to learn and retain knowledge and information in the classroom. And there was already an organization that was providing weekend backpacks for 26 weekends a year, right? Okay. So, working with the school counselors, this other organization, packed backpacks full of different foods and snacks that would, discreetly be put into lockers and book bags, and then kids would have those to take home. Okay. Well, the question was, how do we serve them in those other 26 weekends a year, right? We fill that gap. So this organization I worked with said, well, we're going to do it, right? We're going to develop a program. We're going to work with our business community. We're going to find business sponsors to come in, help purchase that food and pack those bags and deliver them out to the schools. Because not long after before I left that organization, we were delivering a little over 600 individual bags to two different school districts within the community, right? And I know that number only grew over time, right? And so what that did is it identified an issue, a community-wide issue that was focused, on the mission of the organization, of course, but found that gap, identified it, found a solution for it. But that's not the sustainable piece that we're talking about. The sustainable piece came through its funding mechanisms with the over 30 nonprofit organizations it partnered and collaborated with around the community, right? And what the organization did, it's a national organization, of course, but nationally and locally, they retooled their funding model, and they said, hey, nonprofit partners, we love the work you're doing, but as you do this work and as you solicit funding through our annual fundraising campaign, we want to make sure that you're providing us with data, with metrics, with benchmarks, with the information that we can use to make sure that not only you're moving the needle forward on whatever issue your program or organization is working on, or issues rather, but that we can help create a sustainable culture with data, with facts, with those metrics and benchmarks, and figuring out, if something isn't quite working, let's retool it and find a different approach, right? And we can work with those nonprofit partners to do that. And we can identify that through this funding model and through the different data pieces that were coming in. So I think that's one sustainable piece, is looking at ways to not only collaborate with the different area organizations that aren't the school district and aren't the village board, but also doing it in a strategic way so that we're looking at the issues, we're identifying the issues, and we're coming up with those solutions based on the data, based on research, and based on ways that we're just not putting a Band-Aid over it. Mm-hmm. The other example I think of is I was working for a national organization in North Dakota, and there was a community issue as it relates to dogs and cats, right? Animals, right? And what we were finding, I was working with a local rescue organization. Part of my focus was on educating law enforcement on different animal-related issues and laws, and just supporting communities around the state in identifying and solving different problems as it relates to different animal issues. And this nonprofit foster-based rescue, so they didn't have a permanent brick and mortar building like shelter, like you see, like Dane County Humane or other entities. They partnered up with the local police department, the city's police department, and they were working in tandem with them and closely, and making sure that animals that were picked up, stray animals, that sort of thing, were finding their homes, right, or finding better home if they didn't have one. But within those conversations, there were so many other issues that were coming up when it came to, different, again, animal-related issues. We talk about dog bites, dogs at large, expending community resources, having police respond to different animal issues, right? Animal control officers, their job and priorities related to animals within the community. But we saw that there were many that simply did not need to happen. There were issues that were taking place as simple as thousands of animals that weren't properly licensed within the community, right? Very simple, but it was part of this larger problem that we were seeing in the community. So long story short, this is my way of getting to, I went with this nonprofit group and in tandem with some law enforcement officials and talking to the police chief and so forth. They said, hey, we want to go to the city council and we want to create an advisory board. This advisory board would meet regularly and would have experts that understood animal issues and different aspects therein, and be able to not only talk about what's going on, but use their collective expertise and come up with solutions they can then propose and bring forward to the city council. It took a little maneuvering, but we got it passed, we got it created, and this group then not only I check on it every now and then. And it has, a leader from the zoo. It has, the different nonprofit groups, addressing, mainly dog and cat issues in the community. It has a couple, just a couple different people on there who understand what's going on, and then bringing them to the table and making sure that they come up with these ideas, or allowing them that opportunity anyway to come up with these ideas and bring them into a more policy realm, and allowing the city then to properly address them. However they need to. Okay. So it just created that space, and that's the sustainability piece. It created that space, those opportunities, and it brought the people that understood what was going on together to be able to create long-term sustainable solutions for the entire community.
Seems like that would also have a lot of added benefit by potentially, like, for example, reducing the amount of law enforcement involvement with all of these calls when you have this expert panel backing the advice that is given to community members when they're encountering these situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the police department, part of the problem, the police department was spending, I don't know how much money on tracking down animals and boarding them and feeding them and, responding to other related calls. And we're like, well, why aren't we strategically addressing this? And that's where this was born out of. I was seeing the concerns by different entities within the community, and they were coming to me like, hey, we're running ragged, we don't know what to do, and you have the community spending more money than it needs to on issues that have some very simple solutions to them in my mind. But we just need people to get together, talk, and make sure we come up with those solutions that you can cement in stone and are going to create benefit for everybody.
Excellent. Well, that's awesome. I can definitely see how, as the community grows, and so many people here, myself included, our pet owners, are wanting to have those kind of solutions that also are likely safe for the animals as well. So wonderful. I like the idea of some of those long-term sustainable solutions, not just in growth, but also in what already exists. Mm-hmm. So that's nice to think about. How have you been involved with regard, and this was like a prime example, so this might be a really fast question, but how are some ways that you have been involved in community government, both away from here and here, prior to running for village board?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've hit on a few of these already, but just to reiterate them, right, I was a political journalist, so I was entrenched in the day-to-day minutia of talking to city governments, local governments, and covering what was going on. I went into the advocacy realm and was working with them side by side and figuring out how do we solve different problems and create different opportunities. But then, now, and I've been part of different leadership boards, committees, et cetera, prior to moving, but especially, having the volunteer committee opportunity, and now as a member of the Parks, Recs, and Natural Resources Committee.
Awesome. That seems like in some ways you've kind of grown with McFarland the way that I have, different branches, of course. Surprised we haven't crossed paths a lot more than we have up until this point. But as far as like growing with your arrival and seeing where you fit within the community, not just in, Madison and Dane County at large. I want to talk a little bit more about some local impact things. Let's talk about the elephant that's in the room, why we're having this interview outside in 47-degree weather. Besides the fact that it's warmer than North Dakota, let's talk about COVID and coronavirus impact. What changes have you seen in the village and that you would personally attribute to COVID, whether it's for better or for worse. And how do you think that this can work, some of the things that have come out of COVID can work to our advantage as we move forward to the future when we are not having to mask in all public places and beyond?
Let me take my mute button off really quick. And to say technology has, whether you wanted to or not, it forced everyone to embrace technology. It created different opportunities, some good, some challenging, depending on your space and where you were at the time and going through the pandemic. But I think technology and more or less forcing people to have to embrace it not only created those opportunities at that time over the last 2 years, but I really hope and think we're going to see an explosion, or at least a growth of opportunity and different ideas that come out of it, right? I think we're starting to see some now, but I think even in the next year, we're going to see some more. The pandemic pushed people apart, pushed them into their homes, forced them rather. It created those opportunities, those tech opportunities, to get together, to use the different platforms, to be able to check up on one another, to be able to meet more regularly, right? With my day job with the state, we use Microsoft Teams, and it's way too easy to try to get someone on camera and talk through an issue, which isn't a bad thing, but sometimes they're like, oh, another meeting, right? I personally enjoy being around a table and seeing people face to face, being able to have discussions. There's certainly limitations when it comes to the technology that we've embraced and grown just in the last couple of years. But having those abilities to be able to quickly talk to someone, engage with them online, I think is a big piece that's going to help this village and society as a whole as we move ahead. Embracing technology also, I think, is allowing us to find new solutions or new programs or new what have you as it relates to the tech world and industry to be able to solve some of our problems, right? I think, by being siloed in our offices or at homes, right, it allowed more people the opportunity to think, to sit and think, and before they hit unmute to speak, they really had to soak in what was going on their screen in front of them, whatever they were discussing. And so I really hope, I've seen it, I've talked to a lot of people with some great ideas, but I really hope we start to see those come to fruition, just creating new, what do you want to call it, just the abilities rather to sit there and kind of process certain things a little bit differently than what we did pre-pandemic.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that. As far as the technology piece, it seems to us on this side of it, or even while we were really immersed in it, that it was evolutionary and we had to bring technology to where we were at. What's interesting is I learned this, the ability to do video calls and connect, believe it or not, the technology was already there.
Right.
Long before that. And it was presented as an access tool for the elderly, okay? And for the sake of our audience, I will refer to the elderly as people over 100 years old. Because, and the reason I say this specifically is because people who may have benefited from this technology, who let's say were over 55, didn't feel that it applied to them. And they would say, I don't need this, I'm perfectly capable, even if they struggled with accessing those points. By bringing these things to the mainstream, they found that with everybody using them, yes, I would use them, and that then increased access for people who were, let's say, over 65 and potentially under age 100, who could benefit from these things but never felt that they should use those things because they felt that they weren't in that category. So I think that this was a bit of a leveler in terms of providing opportunities for people who might not have the access that they thought they had to be able to engage with society a lot more. And that's been something that's been thrilling for me. I bought my mom a video communication device, and when she would travel, she could take it with her, connect to Wi-Fi, and we could video call wherever she went. So I think that was kind of fun for us as well. And she's in the, shall we say, over 55 and under 100 category. So it was great to have that access point for her. Yeah. And it'll be wonderful, like you said, to see how we use those things and manipulate them to our advantage on the other side of the pandemic and going forward. So, all right, you ready for the speed round?
Speed round, yes.
All right,
yes.
These questions for the McFarland community, so you're aware, these questions have not been disclosed to TJ nor any of the tech group. So Stephanie's staring at me like, oh my gosh, what is Shannon about to say on screen? So these are the speed round questions. You get limited amount of time on these ones because otherwise it's not really a speed round. First question, which is always my favorite. What are you drinking?
Yep. Had to bring a beverage. This is green tea. Delicious, cold, wonderful, even on a semi-chilly spring day.
All right. Your favorite food, and whatever that food is, do you prefer it homemade or restaurant made?
Favorite food, going with pizza, and I have to go restaurant. I think my wife and I shamelessly are connoisseurs of many of our local establishments and their pizza, so happily disclose that.
Where do you like to go around the village?
Yeah, our neighborhood has a couple different wonderful places. Brant Park, McDaniel Park, love going there. We have, where we live, we have the opportunity, the ability to just pop a kayak into the lake. So if we can get in the middle of the lake, that's always a good spot as well.
Awesome. Outside of work and outside of work and village board involvement, what do you do with your free time?
Yeah.
Hinted to that.
Yep. One of the biggest things I absolutely love, and unfortunately the pandemic segued it a little bit, is I volunteer with Special Olympics. When we were on the other side of Madison, when we first moved here, I was involved. Back in the Dakotas, I was involved heavily. So I'm looking forward to finding a program, around here, on more the east side, south side of the Madison area, to get back involved with. But coaching soccer, swimming, basketball, wonderful organization, and absolutely love it.
Spartans are an awesome team, and we've got a lot of diversity within that too. So, your most recent vacation, and whether or not it's repeatable.
We go back and forth, my wife and I, on what our vacations actually are. Most of them are tied to another family function. In this case, we did have the opportunity to go down to Florida at the end of January and visit my in-laws, my wife's mother and stepfather, who are, this is their first year taking to Florida. They just retired last year. So we're like, let's go check it out with them for a little bit and hope, they like to enjoy the soaking up the sun and warm weather down there. And so we checked in on them. They're A-okay, and they'll be coming up back to the Midwest in a little bit, actually, a month or so.
And of course, that does mean it is repeatable.
Yes. That's the hope anyway.
All right. And if you could meet one famous person, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
This is always an interesting question, and I can never answer it very well anyway. I think one person, famous to me and in many other circles, but he's an author and a speaker, and his name's Simon Sinek. I read a book of his 2 years ago or so called Start With Why, a good plug for his book, but he has a phenomenal brain. I think his perspective and understanding of leadership is incredible, and I'd love to be able to sit down with him and talk to him. Maybe not the big historical figure that others might want to speak to, but he's somebody now alive today that I think has a lot of brilliant ideas that I'd love to talk to him about.
Awesome. Well, TJ, I want to thank you so very much for meeting with me out here at Lewis Park and enjoying the brisk semi-spring weather with me today. Again, I'm going to stick to it. Warm. It's got to be warmer than North Dakota.
I think you're right, yeah.
All right. And for our McFarland Village members, I want to thank a couple of additional people here. First of all, WMCF, that is our cable channel here in McFarland. Stephanie and her crew for being here with us today and enjoying this beautiful day with us. And mark your calendars. April 5th, Tuesday, April 5th will be Election Day. TJ, our candidate, one of our candidates here for our village board, and McFarland, I'll see you around the village.